According to Broom et al., public relations is the management function that identifies, establishes, and maintains mutually beneficial relationships between an organization and the various publics on whom its success or failure depends. Effective public relations are critical in times of crises because organizations and their stakeholders benefit from a symbiotic relationship in the sense that stakeholders and organizations may suffer if organizations are unable to provide the essential services that stakeholders depend on for survival. The COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 prompted many organizations to revamp their service delivery models and public relations to maintain stability in a collapsing global marketplace. According to Wade and Jerkin, organizations adapted and provided the same services through different channels, used the same infrastructure to produce different products, or offered the same products through different infrastructures. These changes were then supported by enhanced public relations and advertising efforts. While similar, subtle differences between corporate and government entities lead to divergent conceptualization and application of crisis communications, according to Coombs. Because government entities are managed by elected rather than appointed leaders, government entities experience more instability due to political influence. According to Coombs, politicians frame crises in three ways: denying they exist, acknowledging threats, or leveraging crises as means to effect change. Additionally, within a federal system of government, there can be contrasting responses to crises between government entities. This video describes different applications of public relations by governors of two of the most populated states in the United States, Ron DeSantis of Florida and Gavin Newsom of California. The author suggests that Governor Newsom's response was more proactive than Governor DeSantis' response, considering the timeline of decisions communicated to their constituents since March 2020. Although the first known cases of COVID-19 in California and Florida occurred within the same week in February 2020, California was the first state to declare a state of emergency due to COVID-19 on March 4th. Meanwhile, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis allowed beaches, hotels, bars, and restaurants to remain open until late March. Governor Newsom was also the first governor to issue a statewide stay-at-home order, which is still in effect, on March 19th. DeSantis waited until April 1st and rescinded his stay-at-home order on May 4th. Apart from clear evidence of a more proactive leadership approach demonstrated by Governor Newsom given this timeline of events during the COVID-19 crisis, differences in how these politicians have framed the application of their application of public relations emerged. Based on Governor DeSantis' recent speeches and press conferences, it seems as though he does not believe there is a crisis, or he believes that the crisis is not as significant as medical experts are suggesting. Therefore, he accepts no blame and seeks to maintain status quo. For example, during a press conference at Universal Studios on June 3rd, where he announced the popular theme park's reopening, DeSantis welcomed opportunities for organizers of large gatherings, such as the Republican National Convention, to consider moving their events to Florida.
RNC, okay. So my view would be, I think North Carolina approached it as saying, okay, it's a default no, and then maybe we'll see. And my view would be, it should be a default yes, and then as we get closer, you can make determinations about how you do it. But I've talked with folks at the RNC. We could potentially, we'll see what the prevalence is of the virus. You have mitigation measures like face masks. You can test, you can do all those things. So on all these things, particularly as you look months in advance, my view would be we should assume we're going to be doing those, welcome this stuff, and then as we get closer, if you need to call an audible, you can always call an audible. But I don't like how some states have said, oh, we're not going to have anyone ever in an arena until 2021. Thinking, how could you possibly know that that's the case? And so we would like to have it.
Additionally, despite spiking positivity rates and deaths due to COVID-19 in Florida, Governor DeSantis ordered public schools to reopen this fall during a press conference on July 22nd because he believes that students' loss of learning while completing courses online is more impactful than COVID-19.
Every child in our state. Our fight against COVID shouldn't lead us to deprive our kids of the tools they need to succeed. And here's the hard truth. Our kids are at the least risk from this virus and much lower risk than they are from seasonal influenza. Our kids also play the smallest role in transmission of the virus. Yet, it is our kids who have borne the harshest burden of the control measures instituted to protect against the virus. It's often asked whether it's safe to return kids to school. It should also be asked how safe it is to keep schools closed. You can bet your bottom dollar that keeping schools closed will exacerbate existing achievement gaps between demographic groups, lead to more kids dropping out of school, disproportionately impact the least economically affluent Floridians, foster more social isolation, depression, and anxiety, harm students with special needs, and deprive students of the ability to engage in sports and extracurricular activities.
In contrast, Governor Newsom announced on July 17th that schools in the 32 counties most impacted by COVID-19 would remain closed until the data suggested that the pandemic was declining, and even then they would only be allowed to reopen under strict guidelines.
Our students, our teachers, staff, and certainly parents, we all prefer in-classroom instructions for all the obvious reasons, social and emotional foundationally, but only if it can be done safely. As a parent, I believe that. As someone that has a responsibility to help support the education of 6+ million kids in the state of California, I have the backs of our staff, our teachers, our school nurses, our counselors, our guidance staff, principals, bus drivers, janitors, all the folks that are responsible for the caretaking, the safety, and the health of our children. We have to have their backs as well, including, obviously, the preciousness that is our children and the kids in our education system. But safety is foundational, and safety will ultimately make the determination of how we go about educating our kids as we move into the fall and we work our way through this pandemic.
In both examples, it seems as though the manner in which each politician has framed the COVID-19 crisis has influenced their application of public relations in proactive and reactive ways. Governor DeSantis is either in denial or is seizing the opportunity of tighter restriction in other states to lure organizers of large events to Florida, where we are open for business. As such, he supports the status quo as are attacking the status quo represented by the new normal as part of COVID-19 quarantines. Meanwhile, Governor Newsom, who is enduring extreme public scrutiny for his decision to keep schools and businesses closed and thus hindering economic growth, has embraced the crisis as a reality and is defending the new normal as status quo. If, as Broom et al. Suggests, public relations is a means to maintain mutually beneficial relationships between organizations and the public on whom its success or failure depends, then the proactive approach for politicians dealing with crisis is, in essence, to protect people from themselves and thus ensure their survival long term. The more reactive position would be to protect business interests and seek to profit from the crisis, as Governor DeSantis has advocated. Businesses and the economy are important, but not more important than people's lives. And if government wants to thrive in the new normal, they must also adapt and provide the same services through different channels, use the same infrastructures to produce different products, or offer the same products through different infrastructures. These are the references that I used to develop this presentation.